This episode for our listeners thinking about or already in retirement. Well, we received an email with a question about retirement. What are the concerns during retirement? We decided a good discussion is going to follow. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This episode is for our listeners thinking about or already in retirement. And to help me explain, I'm here with my ever cheerful co-host and old buddy, Johnny. Johnny, we've got some retirement stuff to talk about because you and I basically are kind of there. And so we decided we better run down this as a result of this email that we received. So,
well, yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? I when I first retired, I'll give you my it's very psychologically and emotional decisions need to be made. Yeah, and it's not as great as what you're like, oh, great, I'm retired, but
it's not perpetual vacation.
Well, yeah. So, you go out and you look at some of this stuff and we were talking about this earlier, is that there's kind of a TED talk on this, on retirement, the four stages of it. Mm-hmm. And,
it's kind of like the 4 stages of death.
Yeah. Well, it's not quite that bad, but I take it, I'll get into a different story here in a little bit. I'll drop that one, but it is, the first stage is true. It's the vacation stage. Yeah. Hey, I don't got to get up anymore. Those kind of things as we go through this, but getting back to the original email, let me cut back to that for a second. That was one of the things. And I actually had a discussion with a buddy of mine, what am I going to do now? And, we talked about all this, and I said, I brought these stages up, and after I saw this, I kind of never forgot them, and that was, I said, well, now you're going to feel like you're on vacation. Right. Because he goes, well, matter of fact, I'm going down to Florida and with my wife and so on and so forth. And I said, yeah, and enjoy yourself. Have a great time, enjoy that kind of phase. And I said, but the next phase is, with the work ethic that you have and with the work ethic that a lot of us have, is that pretty soon, you're going to have kind of a loss phase. Yeah. And that's where this gentleman in this TED talk was really making a big deal out of this, is that's the worst stage, is that now you can get depressed. You used to be somebody at the office, or you're busy all the time. You kind of lost all that. You don't have the routine anymore. And it's like, what's my worth? What am I doing?
And it's really true, right? Yeah. You really do get to a point where you're just, because I'm kind of in part of that stage myself right now. And I'm still working a little bit, but I'm really trying to phase out my handyman work, just because I'm still keeping my good clients and stuff like that, just because you have to have something to do.
Well, and that's a good point, because that's the one that if you talk to anybody who's retired for any length of time, that's the first thing they're going to say is, you got to find something to do. Yeah. You got to find something to do. Now, we're lucky that, we've got this handyman thing going. But we'll get into,
we have the skills to be able to do it.
Yeah, and the skills, but we'll get into that in a minute, of the pluses of that. But that stage of kind of the lost stage of really what you want to do, what you're going to do with the rest of, your time, because you're going to spend about a third. A lot of people spend about a third of their life in retirement. So it's kind of another thing, that's really another chapter, right? So what am I going to do?
It's a whole adjustment. It is an adjustment.
It's an adjustment. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
It's definitely an adjustment.
So the third stage on this is, now I'm going to go and experiment with what I want to do. I got to do something. So now let me kind of put out my feelers, and say, where am I at? What can I do? And kind of start to take an inventory. And that's kind of what I did. I hit these stages pretty quick. Some people just drags on. It can get kind of dangerous on, if you can get depressed in stage 2. but I got some good skills of being a mechanic and those kind of things. And I'm like, okay, well, this handyman thing, which we'll talk about in a second, kind of was just a natural for me to keep going. So then that's kind of the stage 3 is what you want to do. And you're kind of feeling it
what
out.
brings you purpose. Yeah.
And
What's going to bring you some
your purpose. And then on stage 4 is you found it. You found what you want to do. And now, you've got, you kind of, all the pins start to get set up, and it's like, great. Now I'm really happy in retirement, and I'm doing all the kind of things that's keeping me busy. It's all those kind of things. So rolling into the handyman thing, and this is what I had my discussion with, was, with your skills, I was talking to this gentleman, with your skills, you can, this is something that you can consider, whether it's a handyman per se around the house, or fixing cars, which he's really good at, being a mechanic or those kind of things. So these are the kind of things to consider when you hit that retirement thing. So, today we just wanted to talk a little bit about, things that, that the handyman thing is meant to us in retirement, and how we can, pass along a little knowledge on this. And there's a lot of variables to all of this, but we'll just touch on a few things, to think about if you're in that stage right now of either you're retired, or you're getting set to retire.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add too, if you're younger, right, and you're, if you're in your 30s or 40s, 40s in particular, time you get to your 40s, folks, whether you believe it or not, you really do need to start thinking about it more strategically, from the standpoint of it's not that far away. It seems like it, but dude, I don't know about you, John, but for me, when I hit my 40s, time almost compressed. It started flying by. I mean, flying. And you really kind of have to sort of in the back of your head have at least a little bit of your effort popping towards what am I going to do in retirement, or you just got to start thinking about it. So, you know, I always remember I was given some advice by a gentleman who was about 20 years older than me when I was probably in my 40s, and it's the 3 rules of when you turn 60. I'm not going to say them publicly. But if you want to send me an email, it's questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, and I'll give you the 3 rules for when you turn 60. And I remember laughing, going, "Oh, that's not going to happen. That's not true. That's not going to happen." Oh, bullshit. It happened, every single one of them. And I kind of laugh because this is sort of the thing when I say this to you guys out there that are you guys and gals, I shouldn't say that, if you're younger, you don't have to put a lot of time into it, but you need to put a little bit of time in it. You need to just listen to what the older guys have to say, because we've been there. We've done this, and I still listen now to the guys that are 80, and I'm like, what's the concerns when you're 80 besides going to doctors and other stuff, which seems to be their pastime. But you have to listen, right? Because you have to listen. It's just kind of what it is.
And it's never, it's never too, I'm not going into a financial discussion of retirement and all that kind of stuff, but it is one of these things where, when you hear those, it's just not pablum. It's really, you really do need to prepare, because
if you're younger, you need to be on
you need to be on this.
You need to be on the financial thing. And hell, if you can start when you're 20, you're way ahead of the curve. Way ahead of the curve, and that makes it so much easier to get to the end game, right? Financially. But we're going to talk today not about financial. We're going to talk about the I guess the mentality or the mental but
let me go back to something you said, and that is, when you hit your 40s, that the time compresses, and that is really true. And it flies by, and so when you're in your 40s, and then you start to get, then you hit your 50s, and you're still feeling,
you're feeling good.
I mean, it's still feeling good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about anything physicality, but it's like, time does fly by, and the next thing you know, you exit the stage.
Yeah. I mean, it happens so fast.
And now, so now you've got all this other time, in retirement, and you think if you don't give it some thought, you ought to, because you will be going through these 4 stages one way or another. Like it or not, you're going to.
It is human nature.
Yes.
It is not something you are going to avoid. I hate
Right.
to break it to you.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
You're going to find a lot of the people, just for example, you could used to be able to call people up and they'd call you right back, right? Well, because you were important to them. Well, now that you're gone, guess what? You'll be lucky to get those phone calls back. It's literally almost annoying in so many ways. It's like, as my wife always says, people show you who they are, believe them, and when they don't return your phone calls back, you're like, what the fuck, like, so anyway.
And I'll also throw in that, as you get older, you might be losing friends, not because of death or anything like that. But you all the friends that you had at work, you can still call and that, but if they're still working at your old job, your old office, they're, you're gonna drift apart,
Yeah, it kind of just happens. It's kind of as night
just
follows
happens.
day.
So
yeah. And if you do talk to them while you're listening to them complain about work.
Yes, exactly. So, I guess one of the things that this has brought me is some new acquaintances, some new friends, and things like that. So as you get older, it's harder to make friends.
It's harder to make new friends when you're older. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. You have to be active in doing that. You have to get out. And by the way, going to quote one of our John and I had a very close associate who he's passed away now, but his name was Jerry Smith, and Jerry was big in the model airplane industry business and stuff like, not in the industry, but he would write for magazines and stuff. And I'll never forget Jerry telling me, flat out said, he goes, well, I got to have some younger friends. He said, he was in his late 80s when he told me this. He says, all my friends are dying.
Right.
Like literally, not even figuratively, literally. He says, I got to have some new friends. And I looked at him, I said, am I considered one of those friends? He goes, absolutely. And I felt honored. I mean, it was like, the man was a legend, and him as well, John. But don't forget to try to get some younger friends, because unfortunately, as you get older, they die, they get sick.
You just drift. You drift apart. I mean, people move and all those kind of things. So, I mean, don't discount that side of life. So, but anyways, Larry, when you kind of look at this handyman thing, when I mentioned that, here's the pluses, and here's how to stay busy.
Yeah. And if you like working with your hands, right, and it doesn't mean you necessarily have to go into business. You can do volunteer work. You can do, you can go work at Habitat for Humanity or something like that. Mm-hmm. And trust me, Habitat Humanity, if you have any kind of skills whatsoever, will snap you up in a heartbeat, because they are dying for people with skills, like just skills. Mm-hmm. They want people that can teach. I've looked into it. They recruited me heavily for a short period of time because they knew about this show and they knew that I can teach, right? So they wanted somebody to come in and teach a younger crew. And the only reason that I haven't done it just basically is we've been traveling a lot. So it's hard for me to commit to it. But they were strong on having me come in and just teach younger people how to drive a nail, how to drive a screw, how to just do the things that seem simple to me and to you, John, as well. But there's all kinds of opportunities out there for you to stay busy without having to technically go into business. If you don't want to go into business, and if you do want to go into business, good, just stay off ladders. It's my opinion.
Yeah.
Stay off the things that'll hurt you, basically.
So I wrote down a couple things that the pluses of this. If you've got the skills and you want to pass those along to other people, you might have some older folks that in your neighborhood that you might want to consult with the aging in place, which we can talk about at some point. But the first thing is you set your own schedule. So you have a flexible schedule.
Great part. Yeah, it's great.
And I think that's one of the greatest things since I left the other side of
the
work.
W-2 world.
Yeah, the W-2 world was, hey, now I set my own schedule and I work for who I want, work for.
And when you want.
And when I want to. Now I finally have a boss that thinks like me, but you know,
yes, that's
yeah,
a bizarre person, by the way. Just saying.
But you have this nice flexible schedule, so so I'm always like, hey, I tell everybody, I'm going to be done with work at about 3:00, and if I don't get it all done, I'll be back. That's just me. I'm not gonna bust myself all the way to 6:00 unless there's some rare times that I will do that. And so for the folks that if you're thinking about going into this, you can if pricing or you can give it away, it's totally up to you.
It's up to you.
But you said all that stuff and to help people out. And you're staying physically active, and that's a big one.
And mentally active.
And mentally, that's a good point. So both physically and mentally, there you are, and it keeps you going. You get up in the morning, you say, "Hey, I gotta, maybe I'm gonna go over and hang a door or clean, do some hinge work or whatever it might be." Because quite frankly, I was gonna go back to if there was a closer airport when I first got out of the W2 world, I was just going to go down and do some, help AMPs and stuff like that at the airport.
Yeah.
Just to stay busy, stay around airplanes, all that kind of stuff, and maybe let me pick up a wrench every once in a while because I got my AMP license. But, it's, that kind of thing. But this handyman thing just turned out, that was the one I grabbed onto. The other thing that I found is, for me, was it's constant learning. So, from your point, Larry, that mentally, I think it's great. You can never know all everything, so you always have a challenge.
Right.
So
always learning, as we like to say.
Learning.
We're always trying to learn. We're trying to learn more, or for me anyway, more efficient ways to do things. Is there technology that helps out? And technology is relative. That can just be, is there a tool that I just don't know about? Which I'm finding there's always tools that I don't know about. There's some really specialized stuff out there that's does a job better, faster, more precisely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, there's always this huge learning curve. And then, I want to learn techniques too. It's funny, Johnny, last night I went to a fly fishing thing and they were actually tying flies, and I sat in and watched the guy teach the beginner's fly tying event. Now I've tied flies a lot in my own
Larry,
way.
these jokes are going to start writing themselves. So
it's not,
let's be careful.
I know. It's not, but I'm watching this guy teach this fly tying course, and I'm like, wow, I don't do it that way, but gee, that looks pretty good, from my standpoint. I'm like, well, I learned something there. I learned something. I learned this, I learned that. And it just was kind of interesting, to sit there and watch how somebody else does it versus the way that I do it. And not good. It wasn't qualitative. I mean, not that I thought he did a better job than I do, or I did a better job than he. It wasn't even that. It was just a different way to do exactly the same thing. It was pretty cool. It was kind of interesting to watch. It was interesting to watch. I found it pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
So
it's very satisfying to continue to learn. I'll tell you that if you don't continue to do things like that, you start to just kind of drift off.
Yeah. The mental side of it is, again, we talked about Jerry Smith, right? And John, Jerry Smith. Jerry Smith was the man lived to be 96 years old, and he was sharp up until about a month before he passed away of cancer. I mean, he was on it.
Was.
And he stayed active. He was mentally active all the time, and he was passionate, and he was just a very, very cool guy and a great role model to look at, because he was just, he stayed active, he stayed engaged, and if he hadn't stayed engaged, I know he would have passed us long before.
Well, and that was one of the stories I was going to tell you, is that, and I might have said it before, I was, when I was working at the airlines, when we used to have retirement parties, I won't go into all the stuff there, but these guys, the average lifespan of these retirees was probably about 6 months.
Wow,
they were
short.
they were very, well, yeah, I mean, it was pretty sad. I mean, but it was one of these things when these guys retired. For instance, it's exactly what we're talking to. So take away from this what you will, but there was probably, let's see, we had 3 shifts. There's 3,000 mechanics. Let's call it 1,000, maybe 1,500 mechanics on the base during the first shift, right? And I mean, you were around guys all the time.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was just a riot. A lot of it was a riot. It was fun. It was fun, right. A lot of heavy, hard work. But, being around all these guys, it was funny. There's some good screw ups. There was some stories. I mean, it was always great. Well, you come out of that after 30 years and you're like 65. And now you've got nothing
in front of the TV,
and you've got nothing. And now I go back to those 4 stages. Where do you think they are? They're immediately in stage 2. I mean, they might, because of that heavy work and all that kind of stuff, they weren't taking a lot of vacations per se. But they were kind of like, now what?
Yeah. Now what?
And they're on the couch all the time.
And it brings up a kind of an auxiliary point is you do have to remain social, right? So human beings are social beings.
Correct.
Like we need to be around people and or have conversations with people, whatever, but you have to have some social interaction. And when you lose a lot of that social side of it, boy, it's really tough. It's like moving. Always say that, I've moved, I don't know how many times in my life, a bunch. And every time you move, you have to make new friends and stuff. And as you get older, boy, it gets harder. It gets really hard because people are set in their ways. They've got their friends. They've had their friends for a long time. And trying to break into those networks is challenging, to say the least, because people are like, who's this guy? They're kind of like, who's this guy?
No, it's absolutely true. So,
yeah.
So that's an example of, being very specific, they think about that, some of these guys, they did come out and do some other things that they wanted to do. But, for the folks that didn't do anything, they weren't around long. I was only 23, 24, I guess, at the time when that kind of dawned on me what was going on, because during these retirement parties that we'd have for these guys. Not even thinking about when I was going to retire, but I'm like, well, that's never going to happen to me.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah. So
that's never going to happen to me.
So anyways, kind of to recap, I guess this discussion is, for you guys who are out there that are older in retirement, ready, setting, this is something that you should think about. For those reasons, man, you might find yourself at stage 4 really quick, which I did. Was very satisfying. Setting your own schedule, setting your pricing, staying physically active, mentally active, all those things that we talked about, and you might find it rewarding like I did.
Yep, awesome. All right, Johnny. Well, with that, do the spaceships ever retire? You think they retire?
They retire? Well, I don't know.
We don't know how long they live. I guess
know,
that's
but I'm sure
we don't have an age lifespan.
I'm sure they'll be happy to tie your fly.
Had to go there, didn't you? All right. Well, we probably will discuss some more about just doing handymaning as a retirement. Maybe we'll probably do a couple more shows just basically on some of these topics that we've talked about, because there's a lot here to unpack, but we only try to do a limited amount of time, per show. So, all right. With that, if you would, please like and subscribe our podcast. It helps get the algorithms out there, blah, 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 blah. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We do appreciate the fact that you listen to us. We really do appreciate the fact that you listen to us. We really like the interaction. It's kind of interesting. I think, Johnny, were we listed as the number 1 handyman podcast in the world or something like that? Did I hear that?
I'm not quite sure. I have to go back and look at that. But it's
whatever.
Up there. But it's up there.
Oh,
we're up there. Yeah. But I will reiterate as we exit here. Send us an email, guys, if you're interested in or how you're handling retirement. If you guys are out there, that have retired, what you're doing and those kind of things, and see if this might fit in, because I'm interested to see everybody what they're doing out there. So.
Yeah, me too. It's really a good thing. All right, Johnny, take us home, baby.
All right, folks. Stay safe. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros radio show.